Yeah.
Okay.
So
Welcome.
yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, so the comment was that I made in your video was, to what do we do with the new revelations that we've been given, um, and what inevitably will be a failure in folding that new revelation into our lives. Um,
Hmm.
I think the comment that I made was that being a big fear for me, um, because the gentleman in the video that you had posted uh, had made the comment about not being able to go back.
Is doing this going to set you back on your spiritual path or not? And only each person can answer that question for themselves. Yeah.
But I think once you know the answer to that, I'm not sure you can go back.
Never.
I don't think you can force yourself back. So Gurdjieff talks about this whole. He says, to commit a sin ignorantly is very easily forgiven, but to commit a sin knowingly is it's like almost
Yes.
impossible to forgive. And I wonder to what degree that if someone has genuinely gone forward, are they even allowed to go back? Like, you can try, but I think there's a point where if you've made progress, this stuff just like burns itself out. And I genuinely believe that just begins with this absolutely brutal honesty. That begins actually at, like, quite literally somatically the bottom. It begins with a gut, where, again, all the sexual stuff is held. Like, it begins there. If you don't begin there, you begin with all these abstract concepts, and I just think you have to begin with, like, oh, what do you want? Start there. That's the place to start. Like, try answer the question, what do you want? First 500 answers are going to be crap.
Yeah.
Once we're given the revelation and we've kind of made the ascension to another level,
Yeah.
you can't get plugged back into the matrix, so to speak.
Yeah. Yes. I definitely I have a lot of thoughts about that. And I don't know, one of the first things that come to mind is how I it reminds me of my own experience. It's that how I found my way to all this stuff was through psychedelics, such that like I had this kind of revelation or experience or of, a different mode of being, or like that I glimpsed a possibility of a type of relationship with others and with myself that, and with my use of language in particular, that like um it was so beautiful and like but then it's very much Carl Jung's like beware of unearned wisdom, because it's like if you don't have the building blocks to like receive such a dispatch or insight or whatever, or if you don't see the bridge from your current worldview to that worldview or whatever, or a worldview which accommodates such experiences, then it's been literally a decade-long process of trying to integrate this experience and like with this kind of constant awareness that I'm falling short of that mode of being which I know exists, and it's like just trying to, so there could be a temptation to like try and retreat back into my old ways of being, and I did that for a while, and like it just doesn't work because like
You can't get plugged back into the matrix, so to speak.
yeah, I can go back to playing video games or whatever, but the conscience is always there. It's like, dude, that God is real or whatever, or like that you could be experiencing so much more beauty and whatever, that this isn't what you're meant to do and stuff, so then it's like a matter of kind of earning the wisdom, or like
Mm.
that's how I experience it. It's that I felt like a kind of voluntary necessity to like kind of submit myself to the beauty of that experience, and I've been the hand waving madman, being like, there's something over there. And um, so that's one aspect. But then a problem which comes out of that is that um, as it relates to like my relations with other people, it's that, you know, you can't like unveil some truth to someone that they're not ready for either, you know? And that's like a super interesting topic, I think. Just like insofar as we are called to like manifest the beauty of heaven and to be Christ to the world and stuff, you know, and to be transfigured and to also see in a transfigured way, I think, you know, to see through the surface to the spiritual elements of other people's beings, right? And to kind of try and help them come closer to themselves and to the Christ in them and stuff. But if you do that in an irresponsible or a kind of rushed or, you know, I don't know what word to use, like a disrespectful or a kind of unempathetic way or a self-seeking way, you know, then you can like actually end up setting people back on their path, because even though they might ascend with you into this higher way of being or a better way of being for a moment, then like they might feel, you know, similar to how I did with the psychedelics, you know, like, or just that they want to go back to their old way of being, you know, but they can't, because I've shown them something about the nature of reality, which, you know, is, you know, like, which kind of puts them into this responsibility with truth or something like that. And so that's a real problem in my life. And because my fear is, like you said, too, that I would do that I won't do justice to this experience of beauty that I had, but also that I would end up setting people back in trying to mediate it to them, you know? And so I definitely resonate with that and what you said there, but also as it relates to other people, you know?
Yeah, that's a very good point. Like, because I didn't receive the revelations in a way that wasn't loving, or that Christ or the Holy Spirit didn't know that this was the exact time. And so one of the things I've been playing with for many years now is the idea of your daily walk, and that being the thing that is the attractor.
A kind of strange attractor.
Western science is very concerned to deny what is called telos. Telos is a Greek term for purpose. Purpose. The same idea as the attractor that I was trying. If you have a target, if you're driving a car toward a goal, the goal is your telos. It decides how you will steer the car. Well, it has been for the past 150 years extremely fashionable in sociology and biology, because of Darwin, to deny telos in nature. History moves faster and faster. We have been approaching this transcendental object since before there was a we to speak of in human terms. In other words, this is the same attractor that pulled life out of the oceans, caused primates to stand on their hind legs, and so forth and so on. But obviously, pick a number, about 20,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, the process quickened. We turned the corner. Everything began to move faster. And again, at the fall of Rome, faster, faster. And again, in the 20th century, faster, faster, faster. Well, nobody has drawn the obvious conclusion from this. If we're going faster and faster, faster and faster, then hell, we're going to get somewhere pretty soon. We have always been in the grip of that iridescent, strange attractor. It has propelled our poetry, our art, our best moments have always been when the tiny spark of that alchemical completion burned for a moment in our mind, in our life, in our perception. And we occupy a special position in regard to this. There is a stirring in the primates. They feel the eerie nearness of the thing, and this eerie feeling of nearness of the other slowly acts as a vector on the animal mind and points it toward the transcendence. And sexuality and the hallucinogenic plants and all this stuff feed into this thing, and we begin the quest. We don't even know that we've begun the quest, but the disruption of the unquestioning animal here and nowness is finished. That's over. And the itch must be scratched. The restlessness comes in, and we begin to elaborate culture. Certain things please us, certain things do not. We begin to have a notion of an ideal. We don't know where this notion of an ideal comes from. Well, it's coming from this intuited higher dimensional mapping of this object, which is acting like an enormous attractor, throwing out a field of attraction.
A kind of strange attractor, a kind of sociological black hole that reaches out to social processes.
So the whole entire Milky Way galaxy is a being?
Well, it's an organism, yes. And the galaxy is a kind of an organism. You can think of it as a fractal resonance with a cell. The galaxy has a nucleus of very dense material where very mysterious processes are going on, with a dense center in its spatial domain and a dense center in its temporal domain. We are like this. Galaxies are like this. Planets, stars, bird flocks, coral reefs. But in the case of the galaxy, it's particularly easy to observe the structure.
I think that's represented in that cosmogram about how like the top there is like the black shining void, which looks like an eye, where I think it really maps well to what you're saying about like the starting place of knowledge, where that like ontologically prior to any of the shit we're saying is, I think, like the nonverbal encounter of human and human, you know?
Sure.
And that really like it's out of this mystically veiled apophatic like encounter with reality that all of our stuff means and stuff. So it's like I really think that there's something significant to like eye contact, and oh my gosh, there's so much that could be said here about all this stuff.
Oh my god, I know. Half the problem is like having the capacity to perform and get it all out. It's relevance, right?
It's kind of like a map of our experience, and that really what's at the top, or like at the essence of at the origin, or like you know, kind of the mystical center is this kind of veiled encounter with the kind of shining darkness of, you know, that like none of us really like, that's kind of like the emptiness that you described, or you know, that the pure awareness where it's that like we can't really pin it down and stuff, but nonetheless it is kind of at the essence of everything sustaining, you know, like
nothing and everything is the paradox.
It's at like the very beginning of our kind of experience of any particular thing or moment.
The attractor that gets people to come to you, as opposed to me trying to force the thing onto somebody. I had
that gets into the whole, you know, that is the thing I'm pointing at, in a sense, you know, like the big spiel which I rant about, insofar as like, and it brings an interesting aspect into it, like, which is the relational aspect of eurythmy or whatever, is that like by that, even when we're not speaking through our conscious intent or whatever, we're still speaking, you know, unconsciously through our body language, right? So that's like, how do you marry that conscious act of speaking with the speaking of the body, which is naturally happening, such that they complement each other, is kind of the thing. And like that, when
speaking with others, it's this kind of embodied dance of like discerning what level of unveiling is appropriate, right? And how, yeah, that we really can only change people's minds through that relation of love and like through that kind of agapeic or whatever, like you know, kind of walking with them and being and staying true to our own walk, but also accommodating others and stuff. Yeah, like.
Do you think you're the agent of change in somebody else?
Well, I think we can mediate. You know, like, I don't know, it gets, you know, obviously there's lots of like touchy subjects in this in terms of like, you know, how Calvinists will talk about this in terms of like, you know, that it's only God's grace which can do this, but then that, you know, that we can be. Have you ever had the experience where you really think God is speaking to you through someone else? Like, like, you know, you can be like, okay, I understand that this person is just my friend or whatever, but it's also like something else is speaking through them or something. It's like, I don't know, just, I do think that we can be that mediating influence in someone else's life, but I think that it's like a cooperation with like your higher self or with God or with like your guardian angel or whatever, that you are, it's not like through just your ego, you know, it's like through synthesizing your will and becoming, it's like insofar as you have attained theosis, then it's a you know, but if it's just kind of my ego, then, you know.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I don't think I've ever got a sense that God was speaking to me through somebody else. However, the situation I could see was unfolding in a manner in which I felt it was divinely allowed to take place to give me either some insight or you know, a goat trail up the mountain that I hadn't seen before or what have you. No, but I do tend, and I don't know if this is right, and quite frankly I hadn't thought about it until you asked the question, but I tend to think of individuals as their own autonomous sovereign, maybe, in a sense, but that's not to say that they don't have the divine spark in them as well, which we then share, which is one of the reasons why I think, like, you know, the analogy of a marriage, you know, the closer two people get to Christ, right, the closer they become. But I think I've always thought of everybody as their own individual agent, their own. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a great difference between sentences that have been struggled for and wrestled with by the personal I, and those that have been given in some way as inspiration from above or below. Of course, we'll find sentences resulting from inspiration to be more suggestive and compelling, because those that have been struggled for require that we also struggle in reading them. The time is coming when we will have to move away from merely looking at the literal, verbatim meaning of what appears before our soul, and instead must consider the person who is saying this or that. That is, we must focus not on the outer physical personality, but rather on the whole human spiritual context. The forces of our consciousness and intelligence are so organized that we can neither exercise too great an influence upon the other man, nor can he exercise too great an influence upon us, because the fact that our own consciousness is mirrored separates us from him. This is a matter of very great importance for the understanding of human evolution. Whenever there is a defect in the normal consciousness, what happens is at once evident. Think of a person whose consciousness is not quite normal, who has a touch of what we have recently encountered in the form of, quote, mystical eccentricity, close quote, to use a rather harsh expression, but one that is often very apt. Suppose such a person is inclined to all sorts of fanciful delusions based upon certain experiences which are abnormal in our day. You will always find that a person with abnormal consciousness of this kind has a far greater influence upon other souls than one with normal consciousness. To put it rather crudely, a person who is a little mad in one direction or another can have a far stronger influence upon his fellow men than one who is normal. And by strengthening his consciousness, a normal man must protect himself from the influence of one who is abnormal. An abnormal man, as long as he is not recognized, is always a certain danger to his fellow men, because they allow themselves to be too strongly influenced by him, and because they are too ready to regard him as a rare, out of the common phenomenon. Precisely where there are perforations in the mirror of consciousness, too strong an influence passes over through these perforations to the other person. Thus, in the present epoch of evolution, we acquire our particular form of consciousness in order that the right relationship of one human soul to another in the world may be established.
I'm reminded of like the terminology of like the Tao. That's how I found my way into Christianity, was through like through Eastern stuff and getting into like the idea of the Tao, and then how that connects with the Logos and like this kind of underlying pattern of everything, as it were. And so I think it's like, I would tend to think about it insofar as someone is united with the Tao, or like really, in touch with the Christ in them, then they kind of naturally have this mediating role that they like help people get closer to, or like they can give people an experience of that. I don't know, trying to connect this back to how it relates to like helping people kind of move closer to that. It can be very tricky,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I failed at it many times. It was actually an attempt to get, he was my best man in my wedding before we had a falling out. I believe it was like 2 weeks before my wedding. But I had longed very, very warmly to introduce this gentleman to my understanding of what Christ was to me. And after the relationship had crumbled and failed, I got a very distinct, I don't know if I call it a voice, but it was words at least, that was like, it's not your job to change people. Your job is to just make the introduction. It's my job to change people, right? And when I think about the life that I've lived, the things that get revealed to me are in a very intimate way, right? And I talked about this a couple calls ago, where we all as individuals face death alone. Somebody can be in your room holding your hand.
Yeah.
But the lights are going to go out on you and you alone. Like, you know what I mean? There's nothing deeper than that. And that's...
Yeah, and I think that pattern is like fractal insofar as, we're dying every moment, and that I really think the kind of the Christ transformation or whatever, like the evolution of consciousness that Christ embodies is this kind of death and that just insofar as you have like ego death as well, you know, it's like
Mhm.
people experience ego death alone too, you know.
But it's cool because at least in the tradition that I've been following, the more I do that, the more I feel like I'm closer to the people that are around me. Right? The more I put myself aside, the connection is able to be more open and free to the other sovereign agents that encompass my life, whether it be my coworkers or my wife or my son or you in this call, right? Like, as I'm able to focus less on me, it creates that space for you to come and be a part of me, right? In a real sense, I would say.
Mhm.
It's almost like a vacuum's created when I allow myself to die. That's going to be filled with either Christ or the Holy Spirit or the others that are in the room.
Mhm. Yeah, it makes me think of like the symbolism of like the Grail and how
Mm,
the feminine space making or like becoming or also the Kabbalistic creation story of Simsum, where
I'm
it's
not
like
familiar.
where God is everything at first, but then he has to create a space, like an emptiness, in order for something else to exist that is not him. And this is like the created order, as it were. And then so then he puts us a spark of himself into it so that it's ultimately of the same essence, but it's fundamentally kind of distinct and separate at the same time in a way, and then eventually it grows to reconnect to its ultimate essence. And just that idea of like creating a space for something else to be, you know. And ah yeah, so stepping back to create a space insofar as in order to mediate to other people, it's more about creating the conditions for them to advance if they want to, rather than kind of like actively actively, you know, through your own cognition or whatever, trying to do it.
Yeah, and I think that's where the beauty is, but also the pain. Because the
Mhm.
more you care about somebody and the
Yeah.
more you see that they're missing the mark, um, it can be painful. It can be
Yeah.
very painful. The one of the most common ones that I see is like, families dealing with addiction. You want to just hold them down, lock them in the room, feed them through a slot under the door, right? But you also know that that's not, you know what I mean? It's not a fulfilling way to be. So ultimately, they
And
gotta
it's a
make their own
very
decision.
yeah, it's a fine line though, because like in one sense, I think we are kind of called to listen to our heart in those situations and to actually co-cooperate like with that love, or like to that it does require an active doing, like when you want to be of service to someone or kind of submit yourself to like what God is trying to do through you for someone else, you know? You know, so like I do think there is a role for like the ego or the mind or like the individual, or but then I don't know, it's just such heavy stuff. Like
because I think you're totally right in that it's really hard when you care about someone, like that's what I have struggled with also, is that like when you see someone kind of going downhill, then you are moved to help them or to try and mediate something to them. Um, like how to then do that in a way that doesn't end up like, I don't know, I guess it's something about the urgency maybe. It's like to not be alarmed when people are doing that, and to like, because then if you over mediate or whatever, then it might zap them, and they'll end up falling actually further, like kind of spinning down even harder in kind of rebellion against you.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and
That scene in a buddy that is like falling in love with a toxic girl, like you can't tell them anything because they're like head over heels. Just to use kind of the other kind of example of like a good, air quotes, good situation. Person's in a relationship, but you can't talk sense to somebody who's in that state. So discernment is a thing, and I think it's tied to what you're saying. Like you don't want to be totally divorced from your emotion, but at the same time, you don't want that emotion to take charge and just, you know what I mean, force
I
yourself
almost I
into
almost
a
wonder though
situation.
if it's kind of that we don't actually let. I don't know if it would necessarily be an emotion. Like maybe it's that if it comes from a place of emotion, then it's not quite. I think it would be feeling, in the heart, but it's like how do we actually submit and like be a servant to, let's say, like the Christ in my heart, like the Christ in our hearts as we do something. It's that, because I feel like maybe where it goes wrong is not in the like doing something, it's that we don't actually do it fully. Like when we try and submit to love and act from this place of like selfless kenosis or whatever, then something else gets involved, like another motivation or a competing spirit or like a fear or a self-serving something like gets involved, and it throws it off. But I do think that like we should let ourselves, like I'm a fan of kind of a divine madness of sorts, where
Okay.
where it's that like people should lose themselves in love for other people, you know, but at the same time it's like how do you make sure other things don't get involved in that? Because if you really listen to your heart, I think there will be appropriate discernment about how much to like unveil to someone, let's say, if you're really listening to your heart. But then I think that other things get involved and we like kind of stop doing that in a way. Like the mind might get involved and try and take charge of the doing. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that speaks to something I've been looking at a little bit and maybe wanting to explore is the relationship between the mind, the body, and the soul, and those three things being in right relationship. And I think we know intuitively when that is at play. I mean, we have a real sense, and we use words like beauty, right? Or we are moved in a way. There's like this calmingness or um, this this feeling of safety or assurance, maybe when all three of those things are in right relationship with one another. And then when that's happening, then being able to manifest that out into the world through your actions and relationships with other people, right? And that's when you kind of feel, and that's kind of what I think the Eastern traditions point to, is that just ability to be still, like the story of like all these things happening to the prince, and the wise man says, "We'll see." Right? The prince breaks his leg. Everybody's bemoaning, "Oh, what are we? It's so sad." Wise man says, "We'll see." Like, it just being able to be in that kind of spot of unity with proper relation between those inner parts manifesting themselves out into the world. And I think it speaks to the Trinity and that fractal pattern kind of moving through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, triadicity is, I think, just such a profound, like, and when you first said it, sometimes I actually think maybe like more of I like Tomberg's thing about the hexagram, where like I am a Trinitarian in a sense, but I almost prefer like a hexagram where you have like where I almost think like the spirit would be like the organizing principle of the heavenly or mind side, and then the soul would be like the organizing principle of like the body side. Does that make sense?
Kind of, but I'm thinking of it as
so you would call the soul like kind of the thing that mediates between heaven and earth, right?
So yeah, but I was thinking of almost like the infinity symbol, but with triangles. Is more of what I'm thinking, because I've come to believe, just into what you've said, that we are the transforming agents. Like, the spiritual becomes reality through us, and reality then in turn becomes spiritual through us. And this is really beautifully put in.
And so you have, when you bring about a balance of thinking, feeling, and willing, then love is born. We then are able to build this lower triangle that is a base, and the higher triangle then comes to meet it. And out of that union of the threefold divine with the threefold human rising up to unite with it in communion, Steiner speaks of this hexagonal form as the symbol of the Holy Grail. So here I'm trying to show how this arises through a coming together of Cain, which builds the lower triangle in the human sense, and the Abel stream.
And this is one reason why Christ says we are the temple now, is because that's where the spiritual resides and has the ability to then manifest itself into the world. So I would go, because the hexagram, I don't know, it almost seemed Luciferian at first when you said that, because I started thinking 6 and then the 666, but then I kind of flipped it around there, because there's got to be a moment of transformation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or at least in Tomberg's cosmology, he would have the Christ in the center as the seventh principle. Yeah. I really like that. I think he talks about Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and then Mother, Daughter, and Holy Soul, and then the Christ in the middle. And I guess,
yeah. No, I see that. That tracks a little bit.
I like it. And but I don't want to be too zealous about it. But your point was just insofar as that we have to start by like in mediating to others. It's more so about striking this balance within yourself, or like how do you stay grounded in or like centered in your heart, and
really all of it, right? Yeah. Because that's the other thing too, to bring it back to the comment that I posted, is you get these new revelations that come up, and they're very, I would say, mind side, right? And then there's a process by which those things get from the mind into the heart and the soul. And it kind of goes to what you were talking about with...
Wings are organs of the subtle bodies, astral and vital, and not any kind of activities of the conscious self. It is therefore a matter of the domain of the unconscious when it is a question of wings. It is a matter of the task of rendering spiritual endeavours turned towards God, such as prayer and meditation, semi-organic, i.e. to transform conscious acts of the self into psycho-vital currents of the subtle bodies. The Apostolic Council, pray constantly, 1 Thessalonians 5:17, is the key here. It is impossible to pray unceasingly in full consciousness, but it is certainly possible to carry over prayer from consciousness into the unconscious, where it can operate unceasingly. The astral and vital bodies can pray unceasingly, which is not possible for the conscious self. The latter can certainly, through its initiative, establish a current of unceasing prayer in consciousness at first, then carry it over into the psychic unconscious, or the astral body, and into the vital unconscious, or the etheric body. Yes, it can even carry it as far as the physical body, as is evident from the Sincere Accounts of a Pilgrim to His Spiritual Father, a Russian book from an anonymous author of the past century on the practical training of the school of unceasing prayer. I have seen translations of this book in English, German, Dutch and French, the English translation being named The Way of a Pilgrim, London, 1954. It is described how the pilgrim, who is the author of the book, in waking up during the night, hears his heart beating distinctly the words of the prayer, Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Now it is unceasing prayer, established in the psychic and vital bodies, which forms the currents directed above in these bodies, and which can lead to the formation of wings. I say can because the formation of wings demands something still further, namely a current from above which moves to meet that from below. Wings are formed only when the two currents, that of human endeavour and that of grace, meet and unite.
And it kind of goes to what you were talking about with being able to be in a right relationship with our mannerisms and our body language and how that's presenting, you know, because I could be saying the right words, but not actually believing it. It hasn't been incorporated properly. And I think that second comment that I put down there was kind of pointing to what Luke's been going on about for the better part of a month or so, and the importance of forgiveness. It also points to the openness and the God spark that got put in there. There has to be this, it almost seems like there has to be failure in order for that folding to be taken place, where I can experience the pain of what that new revelation is going to do to somebody else and not want to have that happen. And the only way I can truly know that is if that happened to me and that I'm able to forgive that person, so then I can really move to embody the new revelation fully. You know what I mean? And not actually do the thing that I do. I can let the ego die, right? Because that's usually what happens, right? You get this new revelation and you go, oh no, I got to give up this. Or, oh no, I can't be like that anymore. And you don't want to do it because the ego's like, no, we like doing that.
Mm-hmm. In this regard, I almost would suggest that there can be like, oh gosh, how to phrase this. Sometimes we can get ahead of ourselves too. Like obviously in my case, like, I don't know, maybe I think there's something to be said for like the stages of life.
When he rejected Salome in his vision, he also rejected where Salome was heading, into the territory of Sophia. I have found my own dreams in life, as well as those of several Analysans. The feminine individuates along the archetypal path of Persephone, Ariadne, Salome, Sophia. I would argue that the inner feminine, the anima in men, individuates along the same path.
And that we can't skip over things, you know? So it's like sometimes you actually have to go back because you like skipped certain stages or something. You know, I don't know if I'm making sense here. Just insofar as like maybe you see a revelation that calls you to give up something, but then let's say that revelation was mediated to you by a person who is not being empathetic insofar as like what is appropriate for you at this time. You might actually have to like kind of, you're in this quandary where you know I should be doing this, but just that where you're at is that you still have to go through these other layers in order to integrate that properly, you know? And so that's kind of something where I struggle in this regard, because I'm like, you know, maybe I was supposed to, you know, like have more fun in my youth, let's say, you know, and where I'm like skipping straight to these kind of higher things. I don't know how to describe it, you know?
I think that's right, and I think you see many stories that show that, where I don't know, I'm going to use kind of a traditional story. Something happens to dad, and the oldest son has to assume the role of being the father to his younger brother and sisters in a way, right? And so they get robbed the opportunity, what you're speaking, to make mistakes even, right? Because the costs are too high for them to even make a mistake. So they put up these super strict guardrails, you know what I mean, to live a life that's going to accomplish the goal that's at hand. But then later on in life, you know, they've gotten into the habitual pattern of living their life by these strict guardrails. And then, you know, you see some kind of, and this again is where I would call to the beauty, and that, you know, that was necessary for that time in life. But then when you get the revelation that, you know, those lines can be blurred a little bit now, like, and it opens up opportunity for new relationship or new growth, or, you know, to see the untrampled flower that is just beyond the guardrail, you know? And so, yeah, I understand what you're pointing to very nicely. But that's individual, right? And I would think too that the part of God that's the arena, right, will likely did that for a reason and a purpose. And I like to think that it's for those kids, for the brother and sister, right? That they had somebody to lean on, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that
I mean, it's a tricky thing, because I can be very idealistic, or like kind of a perfectionist, or like where it's that we are all called to, you know, be much more than we are, you know, and it's like we have to have, but at the same time we have to have forgiveness, and that it is a process, you know. I don't know, like part of me feels we're in a dire situation, and that we have to unveil these truths to people, even if it is hard. And I almost think that that's what's meant by kind of the judgment of God at the end of the Bible, where it's that in the end times, which I believe we are in, the truth will be unveiled whether people are ready for it or not. You know, and I think this is kind of what is meant also with the etheric and like seeing into the spiritual, is that people are developing a sensibility for the subtle realities which condition our behavior, and in that I think we're moving away from just being attending to like the meaning of the words or like the kind of content, and we're moving to the next layer, which is like how the words are said and like the kind of vibe in which out of which they come and stuff like that. And it's that we have to like be aware of that distinction or like these kind of layers, or else Steiner would say that like we're all crossing the threshold whether we like it or not, and that for the people who are not prepared or don't have the spiritual framing, it's going to be very disorienting and confusing for them. And so it's a weird balance of like, I in a sense think that we're called to judge the world through setting the example and through manifesting the truths, you know, but it's hard when you're like, it's like if someone is really kind of going down a, let's say like a materialistic train right now, you want to help them and be like, this is the, but at the same time it is this kind of judgment which you're inflicting on them in a way. It's tricky stuff. And again, of course, I'm not trying to like, you know, set myself up in any sense. It's like, surely I have my own, you know, it's like
I sense that about you, sir.
Yeah, I'm not, you know, further along necessarily, but it is the case that like once you know these things, you know, you're just kind of you're responsible to them in a certain way. You know, people be careful with psychedelics, everyone. You know, it's like you might end up a prisoner to a beautiful insight that you have to share with everyone you meet. You know, and honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm very grateful for my experiences and like all the stuff that they've kind of, the ways in which they've focused me into like, you know, conversations like this and stuff. But it is a burden to bear, you know, if you, I don't know. What does that mean?
I have some experience with it. I was, I'm guessing you're in your early 20s, right?
28. Yeah.
28. Okay. So I had most of my experiences with those happened in my late teen years. I didn't do well with them. I think it was probably because in my formation, I already had a sense of the beauty of God. And so those experiences for me opened up an understanding of the true torment and utter evil that is on the other side, right? Which is why we're warned not to participate. Because just as it can open up a pathway for the spiritual.
And to your point, it's arguably even more dangerous where your soul goes when it does depart from the body. So your body's vulnerable, but then your soul, in a sense, is even more vulnerable because where you're really going is in that aerial realm, as Father Seraphim Rose describes it, and as the Fathers described, where it's really like the hotbed of demonic deception. That's like where, you know, that's where St. Paul talks about all of the hierarchy of the demons in the aerial realm, the princes and principalities in the air. And that's where you're going when you do psychedelics. That's where you're going when you do the astral projection. And St. Ignatius Brianchaninov talked a great deal about that aerial realm, and he said explicitly that the only permissible way through that realm is in the arms of two angels when the Christian dies, like when the Christian's body reposes, you're brought through that realm, you're guided through it by two angels, because you can't actually withstand the deceptions that occur in that realm. You think that you come back and you're more enlightened and that you had this like definitive transformational experience. You saw Jesus, or you saw angels, or you saw, people describe this all the time in near-death experiences. And the deception there is also that, I was comforted. I had this great comfort there. So like whatever I'm doing in my life is I'm on the right track. I just keep doing that and I'm going to heaven when I die. I already got a glimpse of it, right? So there's like tons of unimaginable, incomprehensible deceptions that occur in that realm.
The spiritual has two flows, or two kind of minds, right? In this thing. And so I did not do well with them. That's not to say that I can at least look at those things and see and know and have faith that for each individual, I believe in the triune God, so I believe that he's going to use that in the way that he sees fit. But to your point, it's a big responsibility. Once you've had your eyes open to something that is majestic and beautiful and truly of the infinite, to not share that. But I have come to believe over the years that the best way to do that is to truly have it and to allow it to go through you into the world. And so that because people will recognize it, right? People will recognize it, they'll be attracted to it. And that's why the analogy of being fishers of men, I believe, was used, is because you're using, in some ways a bit of deception, because you got a hook and a bait and you're trying to attract the thing. But, I think we are the bait, right? In being fishers of men, and the infinite's using the pole and the line, and they're the ones setting the hook. What we have to do is be willing to die on that hook to save somebody else, so to speak.
I like that, yeah.
Kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, I like
and most of us don't want to die.
Yeah. I'm the worm on the hook. Yeah.
Yeah, pulled out from the muck and the mire to be used for good. Yeah, no, and look, I share your urgency in what this time is. This whole World War II narrative kind of falling asunder. The one thing that the World War II narrative did was remind us that we now have the capability to wipe this planet extinct. Never before in human history that we know. I would entertain the idea that before Noah's flood, or God's flood with Noah, that we may have had the capability then, which is what brought about the flood, right? And I think we're there now.
Yes, I think there might be.
Talks about fire. That's what happens in a nuclear holocaust. It's a whole lot of fire. And so that World War II narrative helped to keep the urgency up, to keep people acted right. The further we get away from that and we forget that, 2 entire cities were destroyed with the push of a button, it's I do share it. But I also, Dunbar numbers and all that stuff, you just, I try to the best of my fallibleness to allow the light that I've been given grace to see shine through me. And I'll be the first to admit that I don't rise to that level to a degree that I can't be called a hypocrite. But I'm going to keep trying, keep going. and in that is another sense of beauty. You know, it's, but I'll tell you, man, you get the opportunity to like see somebody make the change, like, you know,
Yeah.
it's yeah.
Yeah, that's what
It's
it's all
treasures in heaven, man.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And it's so much, I think it's so, and people are so hungry for a more coherent worldview nowadays. And like Jonathan Peugeot and stuff has made it so easy to like kind of describe it to people, I think, you know, and it really does, with great power comes great responsibility in terms of like all these revelations that we have here in the TLC. And you know, it's like, how do we share this with the world in a way that actually lands and can be brought up and, or, you know, eaten up, and
by passing through between the pillars in the middle into the temple. And this angel has a book that's opened, and John is invited to take it up and eat it, and it will taste like honey in the mouth and bitter in the belly. So it's sweet to have this experience of revelation, but when you live it, you have to take up the cross of sharing in the suffering of others around you, which at first Parsifal didn't have. That's what purifies the heart and soul.
Yeah, it's big stuff. I really think though, the power of this eurythmy stuff that I'm talking about, and also like the way that we say the words and stuff, but really in like a single moment of silence, I think so much can be done. You know, like I feel like every child has like, or everyone has a memory of like the way that someone looked at them when they were young.
And Socrates comes and sits down next to him in the grammar school, and the kid turns around and looks at him. He says, "No adult ever looked at me like that." Like his eyes were just on me. It was about me.
And that gaze, but the gaze is not, you know, the consumative gaze. It's the
Right.
midlife gaze. It's
Right.
the gaze that is helping you to give birth, right? It's affording you to give birth to yourself.
Exactly.
So could the difference be the degree to which agape is alive in them is the degree to which they can waken up? Is that a possibility that rings with the two of you in any way?
So in some ways you would suggest that it's not just a self-willed thing, right? That you could encounter someone, you know, that would provoke, like by their communion, by the way they look at you, by the way they treat you, that they could provoke in you that response.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the possibilities. Definitely.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Or something, you know, like, or a passerby that they saw in a moment of silence, which kind of like showed them that there is a different way of experiencing reality, you know, just in there. And I think the heights of this are beyond anything we understand. And it is a relational phenomena. It's not just like someone walks in and is shining. You know, it's that the way that they encounter you, they are shining. And I think no words have to be exchanged for these types of mediations, and like, but there is also kind of a like, it's about the continuity of it. It can't, you know, it's that there has to, because you can like give someone that moment, but then to help them actually step into that is a different thing, you know. I don't know. Yeah, I think it's huge topics for our time, you know. Also, I wanted to say something about the psychedelics. You know, I'm sorry to hear that you had rough experiences with them. I also had some difficult experiences, and I would say a couple of things. One, that to your point, I think that, and it also kind of connects to something you said the other day, where the astral realm I do agree in a sense that it's like closer to a kind of it's closer to like the unity of God the Father or something like that, and it's less kind of tainted with multiplicity, even though that's not necessarily how I would usually think about it, insofar as like I think that multiplicity is also the Divine Mother in a sense or whatever, but that but you know what I mean in that. And that I would also suggest that the astral is also kind of like a dangerous realm, and that's kind of what you're entering into when you take psychedelics. It's like there's demons on the heaven side and there's demons on the earth side, and it's that we have to like walk the balances, or like not get too heavenly luciferic minded or too like habitual and kind of, you know, like slaves of addiction or something like that. Like temptation and addiction is kind of a way to think about it. And I do think that psychedelics do open people up to this, like the astral realm or whatever, like the spirits of the air, and how, but I would kind of say that it's not necessarily a bad thing, you know, and like you said, that it's individual and particular people it might be more useful. But just to say that I feel like your experiences probably were poor, or like went poorly also because you just were so young and you didn't have an understanding of what these things are and like how they, and that people need like a real intentionality about like when they do them and stuff. You know what I would say? I'm like, you know what I mean?
That used to be what everybody said back then. Oh man, you were in the wrong vibe, man. You gotta be around people you care about, bro.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big point, you know.
They would say that all the time, and it didn't matter. It didn't matter. This thing would just start going, and you know, I actually have some understanding about what it does to you in a biological, physiological sense. It really, primarily what it does is it sheds away your filter. So you're getting bombarded with the things. You're not able to ignore the pictures that you have here in order to have the conversation with you, or you know what I mean? So you just, everything's kind of hitting you at once. And
I just can't help but like, I always have to stand up for them. I always have to stand up for them a bit, because like they were
sure, I don't mind.
they were the catalyst for me for all this stuff, and that like I don't know, I think sometimes turning off, like I would say now you probably don't need them or anything, or they probably don't really have a place necessarily. Like people would say once you get the message, hang up the phone or something like that. But at the same time, I would say that all of us are stuck in our ego narratives about who we are to some extent, you know, and that like in the biological context that you said, it's that, as I understand it, there's like the default mode network, and that they're in your brain, which is like kind of your narrative story about who you are and what reality is. And I think that has its place. Like we have to have, I kind of think about it as the Ouroboros in a sense, actually, that we have to have a story, a closed understanding of who we are and like what the world is, because otherwise we're overwhelmed by, oh, it could be this or that or whatever, right? But it's important that we open to like, that we get past our ideas of who we are and who other people are and what reality is like, and that I think there's a lot of ways to do that, and like psychedelic experiences that are not drug related, you know what I would say? Like that there's many, like kind of just luciferic experiences is the way I would term it, is that mystical experiences. And
every time I pray for a long period of time, it's a sort of an access to psychedelia. And so, but no, yeah, I hate talking about this because like it sounds like I'm fucking like using this like a drug or something. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think honestly, if you think about it, that is the semantic register in which any of this is going to make sense to, I don't know, people our age in a sense, right?
You know, like stuff like that. And that is important. And I think they can be a helpful tool. And, you know, if used with that mentality, it's like I'm going to open myself to what is beyond and like with the, I don't know, I think just were you like were you a Christian at the time, or were you like were you approaching it in a Christian mentality? Yeah.
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 As a matter of fact, one of them ended with me watching like Jerry Falwell like shaking in front of the TV, like you know, because I couldn't even. I believe that was the one where I couldn't even watch cartoons because that used to be a thing. Watch cartoons, but I just kept seeing the inevitable doom that Jerry faced through his life, or not Jerry, Tom. That Tom, like every episode, the poor guy just, you know, all he wants to do is do his job and do it well, you know. Then mom's chasing him with a broom because Jerry keeps getting away. Like, you know what I mean? My brain just.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. We're kind of going on a little bit of a tangent here, but I just.
Yeah, that's fine.
I do feel like it's a big topic in that, particularly just because I know it can be so, like, I was raised in a more secular context. You know, I was confirmed into the Catholic Church and stuff, but then through, you know, modern education and stuff, I was like, oh, all this is antiquated nonsense, right? And we have it all figured out through science and right. But then I think it can be such a powerful tool for busting people out of that materialistic, closed, flat worldview, you know, and that if the church could find a way of incorporating it in a circumstantial, like healthy way, like or context specific way, you know, where it's catered to the person's individual needs or whatever, that I also think it would be a selling point for the church. You know, it would get people selling points, you know, but it would get people it would get people to you know, it'd be like, oh, the church is kind of hip, you know, they're doing and astrology, I think, in the same way. You know, you would get all these TikTok ladies doing astrology on Instagram or whatever, you know, and they would be like, oh, the church is not so, you know, opposed to but anyway, these are just some speculations that I think, like, imagine doing psychedelics in a church with your pastor there kind of as a shamanic person in a way, you know? It's
well, I mean, the first thought that pops to my mind is Kool-Aid and silken towels. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, just to say,
it's real easy. It's real easy to. I see your point, right? I don't want to totally bemoan your point because I do see that, but I think I forget who said it. I want to say it was Vervaeke who said it. The shaman almost has to be outside of the town, right? It can't be the center, right? The second you start bringing these edge things, because look,
I would argue that Christ is both the center and the periphery, and that in the Eucharist, ideally, it should be a psychedelic-like experience when people take the Eucharist. You know, it should be this radically mystical moment, and that I'm not saying we should replace the Eucharist with psychedelics, you know, but I think there needs to be more mysticism and you know, the mystique of participation in the churches. I think, you know, I don't know.
No, I agree, and I think that's the draw from the Orthodox side of things is the more mystical aspect of the mystery is it's been well preserved in the Orthodox tradition. You know, I tend to, you know, pointing back to the urgencies of the time, I really think there is a bit of breathing back in, an age of breathing back in. So I think kind of the church is going through the schisms and kind of spreading through the world through the exploration age of the 14, 15, 1600s, right, pushed this thing out, and it was an out-breath moment, right? And so all these traditions popped up around the center as what you're talking about with Christ, right? But it was also the edges, right? It was kind of how Pajot and I'm trying to be respectful. What is it? Seraphim?
Yeah.
Roland is talking about with the understanding of like the Irish community and the Irish church and how it was different and had its own flavor.
Yeah.
I kind of think that was what that is. And now we're starting the process of breathing back in, where all these different traditions are getting re-looked at again. And what I see, what I've come to see, is that like each tradition has its own kind of thread of the wholeness, right? And so in this,
yeah, I would actually, if I may,
go ahead.
There's a way in which I agree about the Orthodox being more mystical in a sense, but there's a way in which I actually think the whole pattern of the Protestant Reformation and stuff perfectly maps to the Lucifer Ahriman distinction, where it's that for the first 1,000 years it was more Ahrimanic, Catholic, dogmatic aspect, which is like the closed circle. It's like creating a body and like building up this narrative about who we are, and then after you get the more Luciferic side, which busts it open and says, and in a sense I would say that the Protestants have a more mystical thing in general, insofar as they say the Spirit moves where it wills, and that like in the church people will be kind of overtaken by the Spirit sometimes, and that it is a more kind of psychedelic, like, whoa, we're in the spiritual world, like in a sense. But I see your point as well, where it's that like I think I don't know, I just wanted to add that nuance because I think that's kind of the purpose of the Protestant Reformation in a way, is like to bring in that more personal mystical element where people don't have to go through the church authorities to have an experience of God, that they can have their personal experience of revelation, like with psychedelics example, but that there does have to be a meeting of these two, and that there's a way in which I think the in-breath you're talking about could also be the beast killing the whore in a sense. But I think that it doesn't necessarily have to go like that. That I think that there is also a way where like the Luciferic or whatever can be properly integrated or redeemed.
Steiner gave a picture of the caduceus where one is dark and one is light, representing day and night. And the staff in the middle often has wings at the top or a flame, meaning when we weave together day and night in a higher sense and raise that experience to an ever higher level, like the caduceus expresses, then the staff in the middle, the ego, lights up and gains its wings to ascend into the spiritual world, or the flame of enthusiasm, which is an uplifting force. The ego is related to the element of fire. Fire lives in the blood. Lucifer attacked the astral body, which includes the feeling life that lives in the blood. And the redemption of Lucifer can be developed through the arts, through beauty. And Rudolf Steiner worked with that principle very much. So our thinking is to begin with Luciferic. And Lucifer also penetrates our heart forces and brings about selfishness and the like. But through purifying the soul, which is related to this serpent's rising up in the middle of this seal, and then there's kind of a breath, a sublimation of the Luciferic that rises up like a spiral out of the mouths of the serpent. This is kind of the redemptive deed of the Christ. So with this goes in Christo Morimor. On Golgotha, Lucifer was redeemed and then became the mediator of the Pentecost event that took place 50 days later. He's living in those flames that rise above the heads of the disciples, which I spoke of last time. So this in Christo Morimor leads to the redemption of Lucifer. That doesn't mean the Luciferic angels that overlight us as individuals, which we have to individually redeem. This is something that was done as an archetypal deed on behalf of humanity that we can draw on and imitate. So there is kind of a world Pentecost waiting for us to participate in, where we raise our intelligence to a higher level. It gains wings, and that's the wings of the Holy Spirit. So
like the Luciferic or whatever can be properly integrated or redeemed or like kind of set in context to a higher order principle, in that we can see. Just to say, I do think there is a move towards integration or something like that happening, and that I don't know, what are you, do you go to the Orthodox Church or okay?
No, I'm sitting on the fence between Calvinism and Orthodoxy, or going back to what I was traditionally raised as Baptist. I'm probably going to go Sunday to the Baptist Church. That's where I've been the most active since we moved up here to Georgia. I'm also interested in maybe trying to commit to starting an estuary in this area.
Nice.
And so,
there's an estuary leadership training call in 20 minutes. You should join.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
No, I can't. My wife is home, and I have to give her some attention. She's been stomping around over here.
Gotcha.
I haven't said hi to her since she's come home. I didn't bow down.
Yes.
I tease.
Honoring the feminine, as it were.
Yeah. So, but I want to go slowly. So one of my bad habits over the years is that I become very zealous over something, and then I jump full forward, and then I meet failure, and then I just throw the thing away. So I try to be somewhere in between overzealous, jumping in the pool not knowing how deep it is, and analysis paralysis, because I can suffer from both ends of that. So I think the first step is to go back to church.
Yeah, kind of maybe trying to wrap it all up is that I'm in a weird position in this respect, insofar as I'm obviously more coming from the mystical or the Eastern or like the Luciferic psychedelic side of things, and that and I just can't help but see this pattern of the triadic pattern of evil, like the duality of evil in a way, and how there's danger on both sides, and that I do think a lot of my views are consonant with Orthodox stuff, but it's like, I don't know, I want to it's a whole conversation about like church and stuff, but because I don't want to be one of those guys that's like a church of one, and then he won't join the church because of these intellectual disagreements or whatever, and it's like, who am I to to stand against the power of tradition and stuff. But I really think that I don't know. One way that I've seen it before is that the church is kind of like the more on the Aramonic side in a way, and that eventually through Protestantism you get towards like Rosicrucianism and like the kind of and anthroposophy and stuff like that with Steiner, and that Steiner would talk about like an anthroposophical community, which would in a sense complement the church community. And I think that's kind of what we have going on with TLC and churches, and then Estuary acts as the incarnational bridge between the two, and I just love that. I think so. But as it relates to like I don't know how it relates to me joining a church is kind of a complex discussion, but just insofar as I think there is like a redemption or a transformation of Lucifer, or like the kind of all this mystical stuff, and that it is moving towards, right now we're moving towards the Aramonic side, but we need a proper balance or something. I don't know. I'm awash with ideas on all this stuff, and I think there could be like a negative orthodoxy, like a kind of an overcorrecting, you know, but ideally we can have this like Steiner would put it in terms of spiritual science, and that the anthroposophical community is really trying to lift people into a experience and perception of the spiritual worlds and stuff, and that I think that's kind of what we're doing in TLC to some extent. I don't know, this is amorphous. It's hard to track the thread in what I'm trying to say here for myself.
No, I mean, I feel like I followed you. There are different places that are created. I believe that all these places God is working. And I believe that he is the arena as much as he is an agent in the arena. I think the arena is being formed by both him and us choosing to participate in it. So all these things you're speaking of about the overcorrection and all these kind of things, I agree with. I think that is happening. It must happen. I think if the way I read scripture rings at all a little true, and I think Luke talked about this in the last stream we were in together, in the separation of the waters, right? That's like the first act that he does, separates waters from above and the waters from below. And all the stories throughout the hardships and the changing of ages, there's always a remnant that's pulled out. And so this overcorrecting and moving around, you can think of it, or the way I've come to think of it, it's sifting, right? He's calling to people and souls, and you're getting an opportunity to participate or not, right? And so all these things that are, you know, people want to say revivals, and they want to talk about Christian nationalism, all this kind of stuff, which I think all plays a role, but ultimately, I think this is a pulling out of a remnant. And if you believe that this is the end times, it's going to be a final harvest, right? And harvest time is a hard time, right? It's cutting down, it's dying, and it's producing, it's all to preserve the seeds. Right. And so there's going to be chaos. There's going to be destruction. There's going to be gnashing of teeth. There's going to be people that are upset about it and you know, there's going to be fallout from all that.
In this regard, I think maybe a point to end on is a bit of a tough one. But I do think that there are times where, like, we have to say in the world but not of the world, and we should keep one foot in the system to try and create a bridge for people to step out of the horrible, hellish situation we find ourselves in as a modern humanity. But at the same time, I think we cannot let those who are weeping and gnashing and stuff like kind of keep us from our own purposes as well. Insofar as like, you know, the Galahad channel, who has that Cosmogram, which I raved about and stuff, in his first video, he claims to have spoken with an angel, and one of the things excuse me, he said was, let die he who would die, and he who would live shall live against all odds. And it's kind of a harsh one, but it's that, like we were saying, you can't change people and you can't bring people along, and that if someone is refusing to be saved or whatever from, like, if a person drowning, and you jump in to help them as a lifeguard, you know, like, they might drown you as well. And if they want to sit there and drown, then you have to let them, and that's a tough one. But I guess, I don't know.
Do you want to be healed?
Yeah. So I don't know. You know, Lord have mercy on us. Like, help us to not want to drown. You know, let us want to be, you know, balanced and stuff. It's so sad. It's really so sad. I can't stand to watch people just like kind of lean into the diabolical trends of modernity. But I don't know. Let us pray for those who are on that trajectory, you know, and yeah. And I apologize to anyone who I've pushed further into their sin, you know. Yeah. And I hope to be a bridge for those people and stuff, you know. I don't know.
As do I. It's really beautiful, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you too, man. Thank you for your comments, and this was a lovely conversation, and let's do it again sometime.
Yes, sir. You got my contact now. I'm down.
Okay, man.
Thanks.
All right. See ya.